Welcome to Deep Look. It's Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. It's not Keith Rayner this week with me. He's on vacation. Joining me is the head coach of the USA World Games team, Matty Tsang. Matty, great to have you back on the pod. Welcome.
Sure. I'll try to have hot takes like Keith has.
Perfect. We expect nothing but hot takes.
Of course.
How are things? You've been busy already this year. We got Fury season, and you're going to be in China in like 10 days or something like that.
Yeah, right. We fly out right after US Open, so the Monday right after US Open, and we just wrapped up training weekend here in the Bay. So yeah, it's all busy.
Have you banned the players from playing at US Open who are on the team?
Yes, we have. So that's good inside information for you when you're trying to decide who's the front runners. All the for all the traveling players, we have told them not to play. The alternates will be playing.
Makes sense. All right. Well, we got lots to get to, but since you're here early and Keith is not, you have to play a co-host with me for just a little bit. It's time for our trivia question of the week.
Okay.
All right. Trivia question of the week. Who has the most silver medals at the World Games in Ultimate? We know who has the most gold. That's the easy question. Who has the most silver? So, Matty, I will let you think about that, and I'll let the chat think about that. And meanwhile, I will let you know that it is the 20th anniversary of Breakmark, and they are celebrating by doing giveaways on Instagram every single Friday. They also heard from many customers that they love the bundles, but sometimes only need a jersey or a pair of shorts, so they dropped the pricing on their core sublimated items. It's $30 for shorts, $35 for short sleeves, $35 for reversibles. That's a great deal. Same quality, same amazing customer service, and pumping out orders right now for teams. So check out the giveaways on Instagram. Check out the prices over on breakmark.com. Matty, your guess, who has the most silver medals?
My memory is terrible, but I think in the 3 cycles that I've been involved in, I would say Australia. And I actually watched in 2009, but I don't remember who was in the finals. Maybe Canada, but yeah. So I'm going to say Australia. That is my final answer.
And you are correct. That is the right answer. Australia.
Do you think Keith would have gotten that answer?
Well, so normally Keith asks me the trivia question.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know if I would have guessed Australia. I mean, it's definitely possible since they got one last time that I would have just guessed them off the top. But I don't know what I would have guessed. I might have guessed Japan.
Yeah.
Anyway, nice job. We expect nothing less.
Thank you. Yeah, of course.
The most bronze medals. A quick gut. What do you think?
Oh man, Japan.
It's Canada with the most bronze medals. So there we go. Matty, I guess I want to start by asking you, how is 2025 World Games prep different in whatever way you make of that compared to going back to your first cycle?
I mean, I would say this prep is completely different than our last cycle. Last cycle we're coming out of COVID. We didn't know if the tournament was going to happen. There was no WUC cycle before. So for me, it's 180 degrees. Like, we came into that last cycle with a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know who we were playing. We didn't have a club season to see the club players. We never had our full team till Alabama. And even when we arrived in Alabama, we were dealing with COVID. We had folks in isolation. So yeah, for me, if I look at that last cycle, like, my coaching was consumed with COVID and lots of unknowns. And this cycle, it felt like all of us, the whole team, like, we had our legs under us and we were able to do some real good preparation, both on and off the field. So yeah, it's kind of a relief. yeah, to have this cycle, and be able to do a lot of the things that I think we wanted to do, but were unable to do, last cycle for sure.
So is that like training weekends and then going to London Invite? I mean, that's something that I feel like the US team hasn't done a big trip like that in a while.
Yeah, and I think that was a lot from my experience last cycle of just not feeling fully prepared going into World Games, and so on the sideline of Wuck, it started out with a little conversation with Liam Grant, and then yeah, we had a conversation with you, and then Steph was there, and the storm of Steph took over, and yeah, so I'm really happy. I mean, London Invite was great. I think it's probably great for all the World Games team to get that format, and I think it would be great for the games for us to be able to continue to do that in subsequent cycles for sure.
What did you take away from seeing a number of the other top teams as well as losing to the Tokai Super Team at London Invite?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing seeing people on film. It's another physically playing with them and actually trying out your different matchups. So I think there it just like closes that knowledge gap, brings more comfortability. Also, it gets you closer to what we'll be experiencing in the World Games, right? We still have a lot bigger rosters, but just in terms of the shorter games and the quality of play. My other takeaway, and I think it's important for the players who haven't done it before to understand that really you can lose at any time, right? Like I think a team like Australia, who I believe maybe came in fourth, like the way their roster is constructed, like they're scary team. Like just getting to play them. And I think people understood that, right? So it's not looking at like rankings and like finishes, like actually getting to play that team, like the players on their team and the coaches, like, yeah, that is the way that roster is constructed is very challenging to guard. And yeah, so all around, I think, it was really good. And then, this aspect of losing to the Tokai team, for me, I think as coaching one of the favorites, it's good to have the humbleness and understanding that if you don't execute the thing that we're trying to execute, you can lose, and you can lose to a very good, another talented team. And if we do execute the things that we're doing, like we can be a very tough team to beat. So, like seeing both, like here's our ceiling and here's our floor, and it's nice to actually have that visceral reaction. It's like, yeah, if you go in and just try to play in a certain style, we will lose, right? And I think that's really important. And also, we saw as we improved on Sunday, like I was really happy with our Sunday performance that we can be a very tough team. So
Yeah. I mean, we know the team is always going to be super skilled. I'm curious what you think are the biggest strengths of this year's team, maybe compared to the one from the previous two cycles. Like where do you see the relative strengths? And perhaps that has something to do with how the game is changing overall. Just like style of Ultimate in 2025 being different than it was in 22 or in 17. But yeah, what are the strengths and weaknesses right now?
I mean, I think our strengths right now is our defense, and I think it showed like when we played poor defense, like we're not that good, and when we really lock in from like not just like the one on one, but also like on our marking, on our being aware of each other, we're really really good. So I would say defensively, we've had those flashes of what our ceiling can be, and being able to guard all positions. And I think also like we have players who are really aware, so they can look to guard 1.5 and look to help. But also, for us as coaches, we want them to be on their primary check. Uh, I think the difference in, I think we've been experimenting, like, yeah, for certain, like offensive styles have changed, and they've changed definitely in the US, and there's a lot of kind of more tempo, and a lot of like for the verts, a lot of front of the stack action. And so I think it's trying to combine like that with also balancing with like we want to play through all 7 players. And so if you have all this front of the stack action, how do you get to into the cutter layers? And so I think for us, like we're still, I think we have an identity on offense, and we're still trying to refine that and make sure that we all are playing in service of that. So, but I think with all these teams, like offense is always a thing that can be a little bit rougher. So yeah, really focus on our defense. And I think if we do that and are stingy with the disc, like we're a tough team to beat. And if we don't do that, then, 50-50, like whoever makes better plays. Right.
Right.
And as much as that's great for the audience, I'm trying, I thought that's okay. Like as a showcase game was awesome. Right. Like 50 turn, like whatever. We had like 50 turnovers, people just ripping it. You see showcase, right? Like that matchup with Nick Whitlock was awesome. But as a coach, it was like, yeah, we're here to try to make it super boring for folks. So, yeah.
um, so obviously we didn't have all the teams there. Maybe just based on your comment earlier, do you feel like Australia is the scariest team that you saw at that tournament? I mean, of course, Canada finished second.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I was kind of making the point that even a team that finishes, I don't even know, I think they
Got it.
finished maybe fourth, is still dangerous. Like, yeah, I thought Canada's defensive looks were really effective. Um, yeah, I think that like I would not put their performance from last time, put too much stock in that. Like they look much better. And yeah, like Germany, their offense, like, like Nico is still out there just throwing all whatever he wants out there. They have some really athletic receivers. I think they have a good mix of experience and new players. Um, you know, like seeing Kaiawea on Australia was a revelation. Like size and speed, impressive. Like we're gonna have to work really hard to find good matchups on her. Alex Gann was, yeah. So for me, it's like, and then yeah, France's system and how they work together and this like their athleticism. They are so fast, right? Like, and so for me, it's much respect to all those players. When people was like, "Well, what's going to be your tough matchup?" It was like, "This is not a pick and choose what your tough matchup. You have to go into all of those like with appropriate, fear and respect for
I
sure."
mean, that's certainly how it felt in 2022, where
Yeah,
every team is really good. Like the
yeah,
games are 13 and they're short
yeah,
and the time limit is
yeah.
short. So it's very
Yeah.
atypical of what we're used to, and you just don't get those sort of easy matchups. Um, that said, you did get a very favorable pool draw, I would say. What did you think when you saw the pools?
In an ironic sense, like for me, like I want, yeah, I actually like where how were the pools made? Was it on the rankings or was there some? I actually have no idea. But yeah, I
I
mean,
will tell you, I was
what I
there
would
for the pool
say,
draw.
okay, and so what
So
happened? Like, how is this
okay,
done?
so the top two teams from, I think they use the rankings, but the rankings might be based still on like last World Games. So USA, Australia, top two seeds placed into A and B. And then within each next tier of pair of teams, they randomize. So, Colombia and Germany were the next ranked teams. They randomize them into A and B. Um, I actually picked the Brian Gissel of WIFDIF, like drew two balls and I would choose like right or left, and that's how they got placed into A and to B. This was during a live stream at a Chinese like ultimate tournament, so there were like all these people watching on a giant screen at an ultimate tournament. It was kind of a wild thing.
Amazing.
But I managed to pick all of the best teams. I think we'll see. France looked a little shaky, and we can talk about that. But I think I picked all of the strongest sort of like expected teams into Pool B. And then you got Germany, Japan, and China.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what I said before is like it's really hard to predict, right? So I think, yeah, on paper, maybe you want to see, I don't know, a team like Colombia in our pool, but honestly, like, who knows, right? Like, I think a team like GB last cycle, like, we got luck. We played GB on the first day, and they were dealing with some health and COVID stuff. And like, if they had all their players, like, given how we were playing in the beginning of that tournament, we could have lost that game, right? So, we dodged a bullet, and I don't know if people were coming in like thinking like those, that quote unquote was a top team. So for me, it's like, yeah, sure, on paper, maybe you want to see those other folks. But honestly, right, like I'm looking at those teams and like, yeah, all of them, I have an appropriate, you know, level of fear. I think one of the things that I am appreciative is that Japan is in our pool, right? Like I think also like right styles make fights. And so like
Yeah.
having multiple styles, like I think if we didn't have a Japan or Colombia and we were playing, and I have no idea how, you know, China plays, right? Like that really is a black box for us. So, but I am appreciative that we have a German style team that's going to test us in a certain way, and a Japanese style team that's going to test us, and then an unknown, right? Like we need to be ready for adjusting on the fly of the point in front of us. And so, you know, I can look at that pool and see, yeah, like this is going to be give us the steps that we need to first of all stay kind of on our toes, and then hopefully prepare us, you know, for bracket play. Um, yeah, so I think it'll be interesting, and you know, you could say maybe Canada is low seeded there, right? Given their
Oh
past
yeah.
performance,
Oh
so who
yeah.
knows?
Yeah. They're going to be much better than they were in 22. They seem like
Yeah.
clearly upgraded at multiple positions. Um, one of the things that is so difficult, and we've talked about this many times before, and nothing has changed. Maybe it's only harder. Is picking the team. You got to pick 14 players. How hard was it this time around? And what did you see at tryouts from this group and the rest of the people who made that first cut?
Um, it's hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't think it was, yeah, it's always hard. And, you know, I think the difficulty is there isn't necessarily a right answer. I think there's a right answer for maybe the staff that's involved. And then, you know, I think I've talked about this before. It's like once you determine some of your first, like for me, I determine our first ins by the performance over, you know, 4 days of tryouts, and then build around those folks. And it's not necessarily building around um, past reputation as much. That's not the starting point. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard, and I think we did a really good job. Our alternates have played awesome during this whole tournament, this whole part of the process. So, I'm really happy with like all our options, and you know, kind of what we built for whatever situation. But yeah, for sure, like these things are always really hard, and yeah, I think it'd be an interesting exercise to have I mean, people do this, I guess, already online, but like actually coaches, um, yeah, forming their teams in a real way, and then having a discussion about like what, you know, what the criteria is. I think there could be a lot of learning from there, and you know, I would appreciate that too, because obviously, like I have my system, but and how I look at it, but I think there's legitimate ways to build rosters, and you know, in many different ways. So for me, yeah, I don't find those conversations about snubs and not like, you know, yeah, I have a really open mind about all of that, and I'm pretty like, yeah, like realistic. It's like for sure, like put someone else in this thing and it could look really different, and also could be really successful. But you know, for the team, you know, for the team that I'm going to coach, like there are certain aspects that are important for me and that I'm comfortable with, right? So, and you know, like I had that experience too of like being an assistant to Dutchy, and you know, picking in a different way, and for sure, like that all made sense to me, right? And I also think I have an ability to coach the team in front of me. Like I actually,
Right.
well, have opinions about selections. Like I can go another way, and I do think I have a flexibility enough of like, okay, you switch out 4 people here. I feel like I still have the ability to coach that team, and I can switch, even though I have, you know, some ideology and strong opinions about things.
Sure. So I'm going to ask you about a few specific players. First is Cammy Groom, who has been a really elite player for at least 2 other cycles and was a late cut
Yes.
the last couple of times, and now finally makes the team. What was the? This is a weird question, maybe. Well, what was the difference this time? Like I could make the case that Cammy was a better player in 22 or even in 17 than she is in 25. She's obviously more experienced now, but like, what was the thing that you feel like got her over the hump this time?
Um, I mean, I think I wouldn't say this got her over the hump because Cammy has played well at every single tryout, and I would agree that in years that she didn't make the traveling roster, she might have been the top one or two player in the women's division. And I think what I would want to do is generalize. So not specifically Cammy, but these general things came into those decisions during the cycles with Cammy were that in terms of roster construction, like sometimes it's not even like we're not comparing one to one, right? Like, you
Right.
know, the dynamic is we had a male matching player playing a certain way that affected what it looked like on the, women match side. What I would say with Cammy is, for whatever reason, as it's played with more and more experience, has been able to be super adaptable. And I would say that's what actually Cammy looked great in the horizontal offense, looked great in the vertical offense for us. Obviously, can take big matchups and just fill space so well, and also can be a primary cutter. And also, uh, in terms of vibes, like people have so much confidence when they're on the field. So and that, again, like I'm not saying like, oh, that wasn't happening in the other two cycles, but I also would say like, yeah, the reality of this stuff is like it's a lot. You can play to your best and still not make this team, and that sucks for those folks, but it's the reality. Um, but yeah, I would say I've been so impressed with Cammy's perseverance through really difficult situations, and I personally, yeah, am so happy that she's able to travel with our team and get this experience, and it is fully deserving for her body of work, but also fully deserving for how she's playing.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. Um, are there any players for whom you are concerned about injuries or potentially needing to replace them on the team the team that's going to play in China?
Yeah, I mean, injuries are a part of sports, and like I think it's no different than what we're going through on club teams. I think the difference is the logistics of like this tournament is far away and you can't just carry a bigger roster. So yeah, we're monitoring everything closely. It's been actually nice. Like the folks that have been injured are on a really nice uh, progression of getting better. And we have a really great, we have medical staff. So we have a team doctor and team trainer. And so we're in constant conversation with them. And, this is one of the things that's really different about this team compared to even the other national teams is like, we're constantly talking and evaluating. So yeah, it's just part of this you know, what the World Games are is about because you have such a small roster.
Yeah. Do you know when you'll make a final decision, or will you have some of the alternates traveling even if they don't end up playing in case?
Um, we have like KJ is traveling with the team because Finney's playing.
Yep.
So there is that. Yeah, we can make a call till right before competition. So yeah,
Got
all
it.
things are in play, and we're still talking. Like I'll be having a meeting later on today to talk about all those. Yeah, all those
Wow.
aspects.
So we
I
could have
think
like
if you had a I
continue.
mean, if you had unlimited money, right, you would just bring more people, which I would love to do.
Sure.
But we don't have if someone wants to kick in some money, like I'll bring all the alternates. It would be amazing. And I also think like we just had our final practice weekend in the Bay a couple days ago, and yeah, it's like we've done a really good job of building the 20 both on and off the field. And yeah, it's a little bit sad right now not to keep on carrying them physically with us. Like I think they've done enough where we're definitely carrying like the things that they brought to our team with us, and we're going to do our best to replicate that for our team because they've made us really successful. Like I've been yeah, alternates were really I think both the team and the alternates put a lot of intention on like what that dynamic was this cycle. So
How would you describe the vibe and the energy of this year's team?
Oh man. Um, I think it's a little bit like I don't know. Sunday we had a whole uh Christmas in July, so we had a Christmas tree at my house, and we everybody had like it was Secret Santa, and they made homemade gifts for everyone, and so there's a certain level of like I don't know lightness and goofiness, and but we have intensity as well. So I think it's like it's kind of nice to have both sides, and then we have kind of the people who are right in the middle and can kind of go both ways. So I don't know if I could. I think there's a lot of connection, and it's been nice, and an ability to create connection for the extroverts and the introverts, which has been nice too. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun with the team. We made like 400 dumplings together for
Oh,
dinner on
nice.
Saturday. So we cooked together, like made crafts together. Like it's been really nice. So.
Cool. All right, I have to ask. I understand if you don't want to answer, but did anybody on the 14 not practice this past weekend because of injury reasons?
Trope didn't practice. Trope is limited in practice, so did stuff that was mainly non-contact and that she could control. She's coming back from a hammy, but in real good. I think it's like a 4 or 5 week mark, so should be fine. But something obviously we want to monitor and like not
Sure.
put her into a situation where there's any setbacks. But yeah, everyone else was playing.
I thought Claire looked like the best player on the team in London. Do you have thoughts on who played particularly well?
Yeah, Trope has been playing really well. Michael Ing has continued like his performance from tryouts of being just like both groups want Michael on their line for both O and D. So I would say he's been a standout and has continued to be a standout. Um, yeah, but I've been really happy with yeah how everyone has embraced it and played really well for sure.
Has it been cool coaching Henry and Michael? To have them together on the team is quite something, huh?
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing, and obviously Anna's part of that. Their little family
Yeah.
is the brothers, and then Anna and then McKenna, right? They're all super close with each other. So yeah, it's been great getting to know them as individuals. But obviously, like their little crew is funny. So the yeah, when you have familiarity with family and yeah, seeing that dynamic, whether it's bickering or being very sweet to each other. So yeah, that's been super special.
Okay, so I do want to ask, I know that your general philosophy is to not really have set offensive and defensive lines, and we've never really seen that from World Games teams. Is there any change to that for this year's cycle, or do you expect to mostly play a lot of open rotation on both O and D?
Yeah, I mean we have two set. Like you kind of have to have. Yeah, we have two lines of seven, and with the gender switch, you have areas to bring folks over. So I would say that with the coach's help, like we've done a better job of kind of like thinking about that full strategically. So like to open, right? There are areas that you only have one timeout per half. It's a short game. So you can open a certain way, you can call a timeout and mess with that a little bit. You can close a half, you can open a half. So those normal places. And then you can play around with the gender switch and it's an O or D point, or if you have a matchup. So we've done, we've also had the luxury of having, most of our players around that we have every single practice game we've moved people, and this weekend we did a lot of moving of in each scrimmage people played with different lines to build the maximum flexibility, right? So there's a strategic need for that, but also all cycles that I've coached we've gone down a person during the tournament, so it's also
Right.
building in right for a game like can this other person play over here, you're now doubling up more people because it's a short roster and how those people perform. So yeah, I would say that I've been really appreciative of Miranda and Nancy thinking through that, and definitely feel like I'm a better world game, because you only get to sub and coach world games every 4 years. And, it's such a limited, it's not like you get to try that many things. And so I feel more confident of being like better developed in that area. So, um,
I am pulling up the weather forecast because it's
I hear it's
hot
going to be
in Chengdu.
lovely, lovely, cool. Um, yeah.
I mean, it could
Yeah.
be
I've been in
worse.
Asia in
Like,
the summer. So,
yeah, looking at the forecast, it's like showing 80s. Although I have seen, a couple days ago it was like almost 100 degrees in Chengdu. So hard to say
yeah.
now. Obviously, we're still a few weeks out, but how much thinking are you doing about that? About sort of like preparation for the heat and
I
humidity.
mean, we haven't thought like we know it's going to be hot. I think it's probably going to be like how well, yeah, how well we kind of uh, prepare when we're in China and ramp up, and how smart we are about our days and like where people are during the day, right? Like if you have a later game or like after you play your game, getting out and making sure we're hydrating and all that stuff. We have the luxury of we're going early because we're going to go for opening ceremonies, and so we'll have some days to acclimate both to, kind of the what that feels like, that weather, and also time as well. So um, yeah, that all goes into our preparation of being smart about all that stuff. So
So you'll be there for August 7th, opening ceremony day, and then you don't play until the 12th, right?
yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So
Acclimation.
yeah, yeah, and also the opening ceremony is super special, and like I always put myself next to somebody who's never done it before when we walk out in from the belly of the stadium out, because it's the unique thing about that. So we originally weren't, because right, like USA US are going to fund that part, but we talked to them, and we're going to make it like if you want to go, and then everybody wants to go. So now we're all going. We'll have some practice there, and then we're going to go see some pandas. So yeah, it should be a
Nice,
really
nice.
fun experience, and also prepare us well for competition as opposed to getting in closer to that time. So
Okay, so I'm going to start taking some questions from listeners.
sure.
How do you think about picking players for this team to try to fit a desired offensive system versus molding the team system to the players that you end up picking? And does the training time and the amount of time you have overall with the team impact the decision on that?
For sure. I mean, and I don't think it's offensive system. You need folks. So, one of the things I think folks don't think about is they look at like top players and like, oh, they're so good. And that's definitely true. But some players can't adjust to the disc not going through them, right? Like great players on their take the disc, they're in a heavy load, right? And they have teammates who do this other thing. And if they can't do that in a short amount of time, then they're not going to make the team. So number ones don't often play well in this, especially in this context, right? Like, so for me, it's not necessarily, um, oh, they need to fit in the system. It was like they need to be flexible enough that they spend years and years training to play a certain way and have a certain role on their team, and now they're going to be right many times a number 4, 5, 6, 7 on a team, and can they still be effective? And a lot of players can't be. Um, and I would say even players we have right now, right? Like that's our balance. Is like, hey, you're doing too much, right? Like players are like, oh, I'm going to make this happen, so I need to cut more or do more because that's what I do on my team. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then on World Games thing, like like we need to have people who can defend and play offense. And then you need a certain number of people who can be hybridy, both for style of play, because I think that's something we should feature, but also for resilience through a tournament like this. And I think for me personally, like to have very few times can you have roll out 7+ defenders, right? Like there's almost on most club teams, you have a person on the D line who's there for the turn.
Right.
And I love the idea of like just rolling out, and I would say like it's been cool seeing like even some folks who probably from the outside, people like, oh, that's an O player, just really step up. Like Rafi stepped up this weekend, and yeah, he's a D player, phenomenal O player too. Like made different. Like we switched him back for it, right? Like we know that he played on both lines and was like so effective. I came out and like was crushing people on the mark. So yeah, like for me, that's also the thing is like, do we see that in somebody enough? And then like, can we coach the very simple? And for most of these players, they have the ability to do one or the other. It's just that their whole mental, right, their whole history and the mental focus for them on their teams to make their teams good has been in a certain role. And so it's kind of like just giving them the space to have a different mental focus. And so, yeah.
This one comes from the YouTube chat. You once said, against your best opponents, you are going to feel your worst. How do you help players prepare for going with option C at this kind of tournament? Is it more mental or more system based?
It's both. So I think the system based is having an option like other options, or checking down through your options fast, right?
Making
Like I
sure there
think
is an option
part of
C.
just yeah. So you have to have something to check down, but I think also like the strategic thing is like you can't just assume, right, you're going to get your first option and hold on to it and just bang your head against the wall. And if someone's doing something really well, we got to switch it up. Even, like with our base defense, we're coaching something. If someone continues beating in the other way, like we have to have moments to change. So having that. And then, yes, it is a lot for me. Yeah, the phrase I have is being the best when you're not the best. So it is a mental thing of being comfortable in the pocket of not being able to get your first, second, or third look over and over again. And can you stay in the grind and that not break you? So not break you where you basically go out of our team system of like, I'm just going to try to make a play, or yeah, like it's going to take longer to get the thing that we want. But if we are able to stay in that pocket of discomfort and feel fine in it, right? Like, hey, this is fine. We're going to grind through this. We will eventually get our first look or get the thing that we're going for. So I would say probably more mental, but systemically, you need to make sure that you've drilled that as well.
This is a fun one. This one comes from our Discord. As we look to YCCs next week and U20 team applications opening today, in fact, what would your advice be to youth players who want to play on a national team someday?
I mean, I would say probably become better defenders. I would say if I look out at the landscape, like there's, and the best players are often quote unquote best players, or what's noticeable is offensive contribution. And I always say once you get to coaching staffs, like if you can really lock down one position, amazing. If you can lock down two positions, um, you are going to be a real asset to a team. And so I think there's that as a general kind of like more specific thing. And then, my thing with players is like develop all of your skills, offense, defense, and as a teammate. I think the teammate stuff is often overlooked. And it's definitely us at the national program because we're trying to put these teams together. People who are great teammates and can connect people are really essential to unlock all the skill that we have in the US. And also the experience is important, right? Like I think creating a team that you want to be on, right? Like we have a lot of success, and can we be a little bit more expansive in what we're trying to do? Yeah, and then I'd also tell players like don't use a strategy to try to get on one of those teams. Become better in all these things. But if you want a specific thing, like be able to play D. And so like I've had some of my players who I coached in middle school and start going to these things. So it's like, yeah, be a great teammate, play really and put a lot of effort there. And to me, coaches who are experienced and been through these processes, they're going to see that and be like, but that checks a big box for us that we don't get with the quote unquote top players always. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask, of course, I'm going to lose my train of thought right as I get to the next question. So let me take one more to recapture my my thought. Um, what advice would you give to someone whose goal is to eventually become a USA national team coach? That's another one. It's kind of the opposite question in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably, well, I don't know. Maybe both things seem sometimes like black boxes to folks. I think first of all, probably reaching out to, my experience is a lot of the current national team coaches are really like coaches in general want to talk to other coaches, right? And I think that's a big thing. So I think reaching out to those folks and kind of getting their experience, right? Because my experience is different from somebody else's. But I do think like you have to be coaching in highly competitive games. So at whatever level you're doing that, like figuring out like what team is that and how do I take the steps to get there, and then developing connections, right? Like because that's the other thing, like there's candidates out there that don't have enough experience, and then there's candidates out there who have the experience but haven't made the connections. And so I think systemically, like we as national coaching staffs could do a better job of making ourselves open for that, like creating a structure for that. And then yeah, my you have to have high quality reps, and sometimes that's hard, right, depending on where you are, but that is important. And yeah, so wherever you are, like where is the best ultimate being most competitive ultimate being played, and how do you get there, so you get those reps.
How much for you when you're doing roster construction are you thinking about having people who played last cycle and having people you expect that will be on the team in the next cycle?
um I would say not neither, like those don't come into play, but I am a big, for all the rosters I had, like we're not building for the future, we're building for this cycle. And that's the starting point. And if you're building for this cycle, for sure, you need like experience, right? Like if you talk to people who've been through this, they're like, yeah, this is the hardest tournament to win that I've ever had to win. And it's different from other national teams, right? National teams, largely, we are walking through competition and then maybe we have one hard game or two hard games. This one, you lose that first game, you're basically don't have any control, right? Like the expectation of winning is high, but the actual feedback is really like the pressure is fully there. So we need those experience, and then we need like folks who don't know any better, who play, who are young and like bring that type of energy to the group to be successful in the same cycle. So the source is how do we build the best for this cycle? And you need a balance of both. Um, and so, yeah, I don't start with like, hey, like what's going to happen in 2029? Because who knows, right? Like you definitely can't predict the future. And yeah, so for me, it's like this cycle is the most important thing. And yes, sure, you are like, do we have any experience? Who's going to be our leader? Do we have enough kind of that like young energy that is really important for a team like this? That, right, you play a hell point and those seven people come off the line, the next seven go in, and your line is the people who just came off. Those are the people on the sideline. That's it, right? And
Right.
you don't have that experience ever in club. You can go like O team goes, sits in the shade, drinks a Red Bull, starts talking about what they're going to do when they go next on the field, right? And then you have these other people who are actually talking to the D. That doesn't happen, right? And so for me, it's like, yeah, how do we build the roster for that? Like, we need sideline players. We need someone who's a number one on the field and a number one on the sideline. And how often do you see that quality in folks, right? So
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to decide who I think the biggest surprise player to make this team was. Maybe it was Marquez. I'd love to hear what you saw from Marquez Brownlee, who obviously has been a really, really good player, but I don't think a lot of people thought of him as a World Games level player, and maybe wrongly so. I personally was on the bandwagon early, but I was maybe on my own for the most part. So what did you see from him at tryouts and throughout this process so far?
I think his distribution ability is really nice. Like, right, obviously able to break the mark, and be consistent doing that. His backhand breaks are like It's really, really, really nice. And I think watching him through the walk cycle, like I thought on the and tryouts actually. So even before the World Games, just seeing how well he played in a mixed sense. I think of having someone of his size, right? Like on the World Games, like there's small roster. So having a big like him back in the handler space pulls right a big out of the D space, especially in the mixed context. Right now, we're dealing with less male matching big in the D space, and then his ability obviously to flex into a cutter, which does really well. Gives us multiple options both for defensive matchups, right? Because he often defensively covers the primary cutter or the primary handler, right, where the ball is going through. So for me, it's like that flexibility on both O and D, and then his ability to play mixed. And like Marquez has improved so much in the last handful of years. So I think there's also like this thing in Ultimate where we don't have a growth mindset players. They come out like even great players, right? Like these young, amazing players is like they will change, right? Like and they will be better, both like for skill wise, but also like mentally and like understanding how to play on teams. And so for me, that's the other thing is like, yeah. And yeah, so I think for his body of work through the walk cycle and then into World Games, made me super comfortable having China, or I guess see you at US Open first and then in China.
See you at US Open and then see you at China.
Yeah. Thank you.
Matty Tsang with us here on Deep Look. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking UFA playoffs. Got some Masters Nationals results, windmill chatter, and question of the week. We'll be back. Thanks, Matty.
Same shit, different day. If I'm getting paid, then you know I'm on the way. Pushing PCH, crib feeling like a cage. TVs in the whip, and they play Soul Train, yeah. Gold chain hanging from my chest. Rockin' bell bottoms, baby boy, I'm the best. Platform shoes got me feeling top deck. On the yacht, I'm a hot girl, show me some respect. Yeah, I'm a dawn and you know it. I'm giving you a shot, show up, don't blow it. If I'm in my zone, don't stop me flowing. Gotta give me a moment, I'm a star, let me show it. Some people say I'm too far gone, but I'm right where I belong. They can't help but see me shine. I'm hella fly and my money long. Everybody wanna tag along. I'ma be that girl till I die.
Welcome back to Deep Look on this July 22nd. I'm riding solo the rest of the way. Hit me up in the YouTube chat. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Hit us with a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast. We appreciate it. Let's talk about the UFA. We are all done with the regular season, and we are ready for the playoffs that come up this coming weekend. First games tip at July 26th, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So that's Saturday. All 4 games are on Saturday night at 7, 8, and 9 p.m. Let's take a look at the playoff bracket as it stands. Not a ton of changes this weekend. There weren't that many games that really came into play in terms of what actually mattered from a win-loss perspective for who was going to get into the playoffs. So we've got Madison at Minnesota. So the Madison, the 3 seed in the Central, taking on the Wind Chill. That's the 7 o'clock tip. And then New York Empire playing the DC Breeze. San Diego plays Austin. That game is at 8 o'clock. And then Colorado takes on Oakland at 9 p.m. There's your first round playoff schedule. So, look, the 1 seeds, Chicago, Boston, Atlanta, and Salt Lake all get a week off to rest up and get ready to go. I think, probably appropriately, the home teams will be at least narrow favorites in these games, but some really serious upset potential. I mean, New York has won a ton of games in a row at this point, playing a DC team that just got worked by Philly. That game didn't matter, but New York really does look to the eye like a better team than they were the last time they played down in DC and kind of got killed in that game. They won't be with Calvin Brown, though, so that's going to be tough for them. Minnesota will be the heavy favorite, playing in front of what should be perhaps another record home crowd. They've set records like 3 times this season. Just set another record this past weekend playing against Detroit. People loving the wind chill game day experience right now, and now they got a playoff game against a Radicals team that I think punches above their weight, but just simply doesn't have the horses to beat that Minnesota team. Austin did not look great against Carolina this weekend. Austin could have won that game and locked up the 1 seed, but instead they lose to a Carolina team that probably had a little bit of extra chip on their shoulder in that game, considering that they kind of get left out of the playoffs because Austin has such an easy schedule. San Diego could definitely win that game, but Austin playing at home will have a slight edge there. I feel the same way about Oakland, although the Summit very much a live dog. Colorado's probably been the better team in the second half of the season compared to Oakland, but we've seen some really nice moments from the Spiders, and at full strength at home, definitely a good chance to win. Should be really interesting. Whichever teams get out of these games, I think they can all give the 1 seeds a real run. I do not think it is any way decided that we're going to have the 1 seeds through to championship weekend. I feel the best about Chicago, but Boston just lost to New York this past weekend. Now, they were down a few players, more than a few, that they were sitting, but yeah, they have some real injury concerns. They're a little banged up. And then, the hustle, they've been great, but they've lost games this season that you think they probably shouldn't have lost. And we know they've had some horrible heartbreak in the playoffs in the past. And then out west, Salt Lake, certainly the favorite and deserve to be so. They've been one of the best teams in the league, if not number 1 this season, behind, for me, Chicago. But, they could lose to Oakland or Colorado. So really an exciting weekend of playoff games coming up, and then challenging games for the 1 seeds coming up right after that. So should be pretty fun. I mean, overall, you think about the way this season played out. Somebody asked as a question in our Discord, what happened to Toronto? They did this big reboot. They brought in all these European stars. They put them all out on the field, and then Toronto finishes dead last in the East at 3-9. It's so interesting, though. You think about that team. They open up their season on the road in DC, and they lose by 1. What hurt them more, I think, was then losing on the road on the back-to-back in Philly. Then they lose to Philly again at home. So they start the season 0-3. Then they lose by 1 to DC. They finally get a win over the New York Empire. They crush Montreal the next game. There's just like so many close losses for this team, right? They lose to DC by 1 twice. They lose to Boston by 3. They struggled on the road, but by that point in the season, when they lost to, Boston and then Pittsburgh, like they were kind of already out of it. But you really wonder if they'd had some more time, or maybe an easier start to their season, right? If they played their first 2 or 3 games at home, let's say, and instead of having to go on the road where they go 0-2 by slim margins, they really could have been in the playoffs. Like, I don't think that they were some terrible team. So much of it these days, as the league has grown more competitive, particularly in certain divisions, top to bottom, a lot of it does come down to scheduling and, how you come out of the gate in the season. New York had to kind of sneak their way into the playoffs because they started slow, and they're clearly a talented team. They deserve to be in the playoffs, and they could even make a run back to championship weekend. But they had to beat Philly 2 weeks ago to even get in, because they took a bunch of losses, and they also only played 5 home games. They played 7 road games. And, they made that scheduling decision of their own accord. I'm not sure they'll do that again, if they want to be in the playoffs. But really interesting the kind of the way the season shook out this year. So, lots to watch. If I'm making my picks, I am going to go with, let's see, we'll start in the order of games being played. So we've got Madison at Minnesota. Give me the wind chill. I think the spread in that game is Minnesota -3.5. I take Minnesota to cover. I really think this wind chill team is going to lock in for the playoffs. We've seen them do it before. We saw what they were able to do last year throughout the postseason and en route to their first championship. I like them to take care of business against a Radicals team that just simply doesn't have the talent to get to hang with the wind chill, particularly up in Minneapolis. In the East game, this is so tough. Honestly, I think with Jack Williams and John Randolph looking like the best they've been all season, I think that this New York team is going to win. I think they're going to go on the road and they're going to beat the Breeze and get back to the East Final and play Boston. Breeze have just they've kind of looked like they've slowly gotten a little bit worse throughout a lot of the season, whereas New York has kind of been in the other direction. And I just feel like New York's peaking at the right time. They may be missing some pieces, but they just picked up Van Dameron, who looks great. Marquez is playing for this first round playoff game. That's a big deal. I have to say, kind of surprised that Matty Tsang is letting him play for this playoff game. But I guess it's technically not U.S. Open quite yet. I'll take Austin at home. I think Austin's gonna eke out a close one. The spread in that game, I think, is Austin like -1.5. I'll take Austin to cover. DC game is DC -1.5. I'm definitely taking New York to cover in that one. And then final game, Oakland, honestly feels like a pick 'em. I will take Oakland. I've been ride or die for Oakland all season. I think they get it done in this one. We'll see how I feel about them against Salt Lake next week. But those are my picks for this weekend's UFA games. All right. Let's get over to Masters Nationals. We're just going to run down what happened. So why don't we just throw up some results on the screen and we'll break down the winners across the various divisions. Congratulations to Boneyard in Masters Men's. Old Bay made it to the final. That was the 9 seed. And that's that San Francisco Revolver sort of reunion team. But they did not have the answers for Boneyard, who dominated them 15-7 to win in Masters Men's. But, Boneyard looking really sharp the whole way through. 3-goal wins in both quarters and semis on their way. Woolly Mammoth made a nice run to semis, but came up short against Old Bay. So congrats to Boneyard, one of the true teams in Masters that actually plays year round. Let's move to our next division in Masters Mixed. Congratulations to Atlanta Fox. They come up against Regret once again. This time, big win, 15-10. Dominant performance from Atlanta, who just crushed their way through the bracket. And no surprise, right? Those two teams looking really good, kind of preseason, if you will, coming into the tournament. And Atlanta comes out the champs. On to Masters Women's. Congratulations to Old News. They win 15-10 over Ripe. And, just clearly looked like the top team there. And kind of a, Puma's the number 1 seed overall. Gets left in the dust, 15-6 in quarters by Old News. So, great looking team there. Let's move to the Grandmasters divisions. If we're doing that, we are not doing that. Okay. Too bad for them. Producer Lindsay Sue decided we're not going to give you much credit. But I'll pull it up and run it down. Hopefully you have a chance, if you haven't already, to watch the games. All of the finals were streamed on UltiWorld. And Grandmasters and Great Grandmasters divisions playing. In the men's Grandmasters, Black Cans wins it 15-14 over Johnny Walker. They lost to Surly in pool play, but beat All Bashed Out 13-11 in quarters. and then snuck past Johnny Walker. That's the Black Cans is the DC team. So congratulations to them. In in Grandmasters Mixed, congratulations to Embers, who beat Dial Up. Embers, the LA team. So they come through with a 13-9 win. And then in the Grandmasters Women's Division, congratulations to Wisconsin Bitter. 14-13 over Henceforth. That was a crazy game. You should check that one out. Robin Fennig, Austin Pruka doing some crazy stuff in that one. So great Grandmasters Women's. Trophy Wives wins 15-6 over Nor'easter GGM. Trophy Wives out of Ottawa. And finally, great Grandmasters Men's. Surly, the 1 seed, 15-5 over Johnny Cash. So Minneapolis team dominating in that one. All righty. Time now for, well, before we get to the mailbag question of the week, let me just quickly mention Windmill coming up this weekend, the big party/competitive tournament in Amsterdam. It will be live streamed on UltiWorld, so you can catch the action. It's a Swiss draw tournament, so things start off, a little bit, you see some teams maybe that you're not going to see in the bracket, and then very quickly it ramps up and you start getting really high-level matchups midway through the tournament, and then you get on to semis and finals, and should be some great games. Streaming begins, of course, in a European time, Friday. So should start, middle of the night Eastern time on Friday and rolling through into the weekend. The finals are actually like pretty well timed. I think 11:45 a.m. Amsterdam time. So, if you get up early, you can catch the 3 finals on Sunday. So make sure you're become an UltiWorld subscriber if you're not one already at the standard or all access level, and you will get access to the Windmill games this weekend. Looking forward to it. Okay, now time for our mailbag question of the week. And the question, what are the relationships between club and pro teams in various cities? How are club teams dealing with the UFA schedule and potential conflicts? How are UFA owners trying to carve out space for club teams or not? And how much crossover are there across the various franchises? Did Rhino not having much crossover or conflict with UFA help them win club last year? So this has been an ongoing conversation for years. And we've seen all kinds of different stuff. We've seen teams that are wholly separate, that have almost no crossover whatsoever between pro and club, like, for instance, Rhino. We've also seen teams that basically embrace UFA as a part of their overall season and then, carry that team on into the club season. I'd say that's basically what's happening right now in Chicago with the Union. And then, Machine, who has not yet played, by the way, who will kick things off at the US Open. A lot of continuity between those rosters. If you look at the history here, there is not really a clear correlation between teams that decide to really commit to UFA and those who avoid it completely. Like, we've seen UFA developed rosters in the club season have a really good club season. We've also seen them struggle. I think it has a lot more to do with how you get into form and like peaking at the right time than it does about whether or not you play UFA. Because I think it can be extremely beneficial for club teams to get those reps, even in a different rule set, different Frisbee now. There are like enough changes that it's not quite 1-to-1, but it's also this really good repetitions, extra practice time, building chemistry on your roster. And like, things don't change that much with your offensive structure, for instance, when you switch between a UFA field and a club field. So that can really be helpful, but I think some teams struggle to manage like the extra load, players getting hurt, just burnout because you're playing from May all the way through October. That's a long time to kind of play focused Ultimate. So I think you tend to see more these days teams that kind of play UFA and avoid the beginning of the club season and then play club. We've seen that from Ring in the past when they're, a lot of their team is playing on Flyers. It's basically what we're seeing with Machine and the Union. And And more cities, you see kind of that blend where like half the club roster doesn't play UFA and half does. And so there's always that balancing act. How teams are dealing with the schedule, it varies. I mean, Bravo had to basically send a complete bizarro skeleton crew to PEC because they had a summit game and a lot of their players were on the summit team that was in that game. Now, they didn't realize that they were going to have to play in that tournament, so that's how that happened. But that was kind of a disaster and, could end up hurting them in the bid department potentially. Meanwhile, UFA specifically does not schedule games over US Open anymore. So there's already kind of that schedule taken into account. I think different teams really handle this in different ways. Whether the owners actually care, I think it has a lot more to do with how much of the roster is playing club and how much is not. I think mostly UFA owners don't necessarily care that much about this, but if it means that they're going to have half their roster missing because the team is going to a club tournament, then, maybe they avoid putting a game on that particular weekend. And I think that's generally what you see is like, hey, we'll just schedule this weekend off and the local club team can go play PEC, and then we'll have our UFA games the next 2 or 3 weeks after that. So it's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but I think it's the truth. Like, there's not really a clear and obvious cost or benefit. It can really help some teams. It can really hurt others. So that's the quick thoughts on this week's mailbag question. You can always shoot us an email and get your questions in. deeplook@ultiworld.com. Oh, look at Keith in the chat asking for that thumbs up and subscribe. Now he's in the chat. You gotta hit the thumbs up. If you haven't hit the thumbs up, you got to do it now. So thanks, Keith. Hope you're having a great vacation, bud. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks again to Matty Tsang for giving us so much time today. Really looking forward to the World Games. We are just a few weeks away now. I guess games start exactly 3 weeks from today for the Ultimate, and the disc golf's a couple days before that. So tune in for all of it. Make sure you set up your World Games Live account. I think it's live.theworldgames.org so that you can get all the streams and the VOD and all that good stuff. For Matty Tsang and my co-host on vacation this week, Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.